Hello, guys. Welcome to our weekly IPL review powered by SSE. What is SSE? SSE stands for Sports Stock Exchange, and they are a unique fantasy sports platform that is going to resonate with all of you. They make fantasy sports more real and fair through the game changing features like live match trading. Yes, you heard that right. You can actually change your team during a match. And secondly, match situation index that rates a player's performance with respect to the difficulty of the situation they're performing in, which makes it so much more fun to play on their platform compared to the many others out there. Of course, over the course of the IPL, we'll be working with them on some data and insights to better understand some key player performances, and we hope to eventually use them to bring a better product to you. So sit back and enjoy this video with former England cricketer Monty Panesar and Guerrilla cricket commentator Nakul Pande. Hello, guys, and welcome to our weekend IPL review. This is powered by SSC, so please go check their website out and their app as well. I'm joined by former England international cricketer Monty Panesar and fresh off his guerrilla cricket commentary for the KKR game right now, Nakul Pande. So we'll start with the KKR game because it's just finished as we record this. What did you all think of the game and were KKR deserved winners in your opinion? I'll start with you, Monty.
Well, yeah, I think the way Owen Morgan captained the team, especially during that sort of 10 to 15 overs, was probably where I think KKR won the game, and the way I think KKR have got sort of bowlers of high arm release, which I think on Indian conditions make it difficult to get away, and Pat Cummins again there, producing, match delivering, balls, which, once he got Johnny Bairstow out, I thought that was pretty much, the turning point of the match.
Yeah, Nakul, I wanted to ask you, of course, we'll come to the game in detail in a bit, but Harbhajan Singh played, which I had said in my preview, and I want to hear from you more about Harbhajan and why he only bowled one over. A lot of KKR fans actually been messaging me saying, why do you think he bowled only one over? So what would you like to say to them? Because his first over wasn't bad.
I mean, that's a role that I've seen Moeen Ali do for England a couple of times, where he only bowls that first over, and then it does allow you flexibility later in the innings because that's an extra over that someone else doesn't have to bowl. Maybe he could have bowled another in the power play, but he's become almost a power play specialist in the last few years. It is also worth pointing out this is his first game of professional cricket in 2 years. Harbhajan Singh, he didn't play last year's IPL because of family concerns around the UAE bubble, and hasn't played a domestic game in state cricket for a long time. I think he doesn't play for Punjab anymore. So there's a certain amount of easing him back in, and he did the job well. I thought 8 off the first over is fine. Didn't bowl badly at all. I think over time he'll be used a little bit more. Maybe used a bit more in the maybe all 2 or 3 even in the power play if he bowls well. But I didn't think there was too much of an issue with that, and there was a clear sense of what KKR were trying to do. They were going to bowl Cummins out before the death overs, only having bowling one death over. Use Pat Cummins a lot in the Andre Russell a lot in the death. Varun Chakravarti, I thought bowling in the middle overs was excellent. Would have been tempting to use him in the power play as well, but I thought he bowled really well in the middle overs. And I think Prashid Krishna again bowling out. Very clear. Bowling, he's probably your fastest bowler alongside Russell, but not using him at the death where he's been expensive. Bowling him 2 in the power play, a couple in the middle. And all of KKR's bowlers worked out really well. All of the changes worked out really well for them at every stage. And in the end, just that total that KKR put up was probably a little bit over par on this pitch, which wasn't. I don't think it was as slow as people were saying, but it was. It wasn't. It's not. It's Chennai. It's not the Wankhede. It's not lightning quick. It was reasonably even paced, and you could hit through the line of the ball. But I think the work that KKR had done at the top of the innings and then finished off by Dinesh Karthik, probably the Sunrisers will think that they conceded maybe 10, 15 too many. And in the end, certainly once Bairstow got out, had too much to do.
Yeah, Monty, I was watching the post-match presentation and Owen Morgan said that Harbhajan's experience was key when the other bowlers were bowling. Said that even though Harbhajan didn't bowl more than one over, he was talking constantly to Varun Chakravarti, Prasidh Krishna, Pat Cummins, when they were bowling and telling them how to go about their bowling strategy, especially because he's played at Chennai for the Chennai Super Kings, so he knew the pitch well. So as a bowler yourself, when you've got that experience in your side, how important is it to have them in your ear telling you what you can do?
Yeah, look, I'm a big believer of players with experience are vital, in the makeup of a team, and especially during pressured situations or situations where you need to keep putting your foot, sort of keep putting, let's say, the pressure on the team. I think Harbhajan Singh is a vital sort of part of that team. In various ways. He can bowl well. He can provide valuable insight to Owen Morgan, how to marshal the troops and the younger spinners as well. So I think he's gonna I can see him being a regular feature part of the KK team because of his experience and he knows how to win games. He's won a few trophies with Mumbai Indians and Chennai Super Kings, and I'm sure he'll be hoping that he can get Kolkata Knight Riders into the playoffs with his experience. He's played over 10 years in the IPL, so he'll be hoping that that's a valuable asset to the team.
Yeah, and I'll come to KKR's batting first. They started off strong. Gill, they lost his wicket early, but Nitish Rana and Rahul Tripathi, two young players in the IPL, doing it for KKR. Rana's now got 450s in his last 6 innings as an opener for KKR. So is that a good sign for KKR? Because that means that if those top three Indian players can do well, that relieves the pressure of that middle order going towards the end and makes them more flexible with Shakib playing, or in Morgan playing, Dinesh Karthik and Andre Russell. Those four can just rotate between them depending on the situation. So how impressed were you guys with Nitish Rana and Rahul Tripathi's application at the start?
I mean, it's not the first time that we've seen the power from these guys. Certainly, when you're putting up nearly 190 on a pitch that isn't that quick, and Andre Russell and Owen Morgan score 7 runs between them, that's got to be that's a great sign of encouragement. Last year they were very heavily reliant on Owen Morgan pulling off performances at the towards the tail end. They were very reliant on Andre Russell the year before that. And so that's a great sign. Dinesh Karthik coming in and doing, Nidahas revisited, coming in and hitting that 22 off 9 at the end. But yeah, I thought the way that Tripathi and Rana, every time the ball was pitched up, Nitish Rana went for it. And you saw that he smashed Bhuvaneshwar Kumar for 4, hit a couple of 4s and 6s off first balls of overs as soon as the ball was in his arc over the offside. Tripathi hitting those straight 6s and 4s down on one knee, taking on the spinners, not allowing them to settle. Gill, hit the 2 boundaries he hit were absolutely beautiful. The rest obviously not so much, but only got 15 off 13 balls. But you'll expect him to be better, and it does when the top 3 are Indian, obviously, and firing. KKR, I think, suffered last year through flexibility is all very well, but they didn't know what the base they were building from. They weren't quite sure what the initial plan was around which to be flexible. It was just, you go there, maybe it'll work. No, that didn't work, you go there. But the fact that this formula has worked first time means, all right, we'll stick with that and change it from a position of strength. And it also means, as you say, overseas flexibility. It means, you could fit Lockie Ferguson into that 11 if you don't want to play Shakib, or you can... if Russell needs a rest, you can bring in Lockie Ferguson, or you can bring in someone else. Yeah, or Ben Cutting, a hugely experienced player as well. And so it does give you a huge amount, a little bit like Delhi Capitals with their Indian heavy top order. It does give you a huge amount of flexibility, and you certainly expect that Morgan and Andre Russell will fire at some point this season. So. I think you and I have talked, and I've talked in other contexts about KKR didn't have too many holes in the squad in terms of the auction that they needed to fill. It was just they needed better. They needed their better players and their players to perform better than they did last year on an individual level. And the signs are good from that point of view.
Yeah, and while commentating during the India-England series for Sky, Dinesh Karthik was asked how giving up captaincy is going to affect him. And the first thing he said was, I'm vice captain now, which means I can focus a lot more on my batting. It's something that he struggled to deal with last year. When he was captain, he wasn't scoring many runs. Today, obviously, he came in and scored that blistering 22 off 9 balls when it looked like KKR's inning was stuttering a bit towards the end. So it must be a good sign for KKR that Dinesh Karthik's fired in the first game, because when he was in form in 2018, KKR were third in the league table and reached the playoffs. If I remember correctly. So how key is that according to you, Monty and Nakul?
Yeah, look, I think Danish, Karthik's role again is going to be of that, helping, especially the slightly younger players in the team. Make sure that they actually, bowl one side of the wicket. I think Owen Morgan is big on that. He'll set the field and he say, either you bowl leg side or offside. That's where I want the ball to go. And when Owen Morgan is at its best, he actually it's actually he sort of divides the whole cricket area into sections, and he wants the ball to go into that particular area, and you can see that with the way the clarity that he gives, especially to the young spinners, but also even at the back end, with Andre Russell, he's bowling effectively like a left armer, around the wicket, bowling them sort of Yorkers, sixth, seventh stump, deep, and the ball is only going in one particular area, deep cover, long off, cutting that area down. And I think that is when that Owen Morgan is at its best in his captaincy. He gets the bowlers to bowl on one side of the wicket, but in a particular region as well. And I think that is what the young captains, we have in Delhi Capitals, tomorrow we've got Rajasthan Royals playing, someone like these. I will be watching throughout every match of Kolkata. The real, there's always a value. You always think, what are the key values of IPL this year? And it's seeing how Owen Morgan operates and marshals his troops during every match.
Yeah, I think you've covered it very well. Yeah, I'll come. Yeah, on to you now, Nakul. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, Dinesh Karthik, you have to be a little bit careful about reading too much into a situation. Dinesh Karthik was captain that season that KKR got to the playoffs, and he's just captained Tamil Nadu to another title in the T20, in the Vijay Hazare, the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy as well. But yeah, if Dinesh Karthik is batting with freedom, he knows that, again, talking about Monty, clarity of role with the bowlers, it's the same with the batters. Dinesh Karthik knows that his role is as a death overs hitter, to come in and go from ball one. And he had a platform from which to do it, even if they had been stuttering a little bit. I thought, actually, that the Sunrisers, Nabi and Rashid Khan bowled really well in that. 16 overs, 16 to 19, 30 runs for 4 wickets, only 2 boundaries. And it looked as though they were going to, I think in the end, it probably kept the target even vaguely competitive, but it looked as though it looked as though KKR were going to get over 200, and then suddenly, up until that late over onslaught, it looked as though it was going to be 160 or so, or 165 and defendable. But then Dinesh Karthik gave that little bit of impetus in the last couple of overs, and I think he's got that clarity of role. He isn't trying to do too much as he seemed to be doing last year, and it is a good sign for KKR. I mean, they are a team that have a lot of options in the way they've set up their squad, which can be a problem when things aren't going right. But if they are making any changes now, you think they're making them from a position of strength. And you've got Morgan and McCullum having a full year. They've had 6 months to plan this, and they've got the full year to work on their strategies. And Morgan has talked a lot about how McCullum influenced his England team, and they had lots of chats with each other when New Zealand came to England after the 2015 World Cup, which was the first proper series of the Morgan Revolution, and it was 430 plays 430, 390 plays 390, and Morgan has taken the McCullum New Zealand blueprint and built on it, and so those two working in tandem together is great. And then you've got, obviously, McCullum's had success with Trinbago Knight Riders, and he's got guys like Andre Russell and Sunil Narain, at least he was part of that, and Andre Russell, who he's worked with a little bit before as well. I thought Russell being fit to bowl is obviously a massive plus as well, and I thought he bowled with good pace.
For Sunrisers, Rashid Khan yet again was the standout bowler. I'll come to you, Monty, first. When all the bowlers from Sunrisers are getting hit all over the park, what differentiates Rashid Khan from the rest? Why is he so good, and why can't players get him away?
Well, I think it's the pace. He bowls it really quick, and he only needs to get it to turn a little bit at that pace, and he manages to do that. He's able to disguise his googly really well, and most of the time people can't, batsmen can't actually pick, his googly, and it's very much sort of, you know, like a Pakistani sort of, players, Pakistani leg spinners. They seem to, when they bowl their Google, it's very subtle, positions of the wrist. It's not quite directly coming out of the back of the hand, which is much more like the Australian way of bowling a googly. And that's what Rashid Khan has, and it's these subtle variations that allows him to bowl with speed, and then just, only needs a slight degree of turn either way, and he gets the batsman out. And teams are now, they know that, we're pretty much, if we can get 25 to 30 runs off, Rashid Khan, that's been good for us. And the next 16 overs is where we really, make sure that we set up the game. And that's how, people are going to, teams are going to be looking at how they have, beaten Sunrisers, which are one of the sides which I think, could challenge the playoffs. And they would think, well, it's effectively 16 overs. We have 16 overs to get possibly, bat at 10 and over, and then just, allow Rashid Khan to bowl his sort of, 25, 30 runs, and 180 is, I think, a competitive total.
And that brings in huge risks if another Sunrisers bowler bowls really well. Like, for example, if Bhuvneshwar Kumar will have a lot better days than he had today, you can maybe, I think even giving up 4 overs to the opposition is a lot. Giving up 8 overs or 6 overs, it's difficult to recover from that. You're worried about survival, and if you're worried about survival, the bowler's done their job in a sense. And Rashid Khan was magnificent today. I felt really well backed up by Mohammed Nabi, who had a poor season last season, but is a very experienced cricketer. I mean, he's been playing 15th or 16th year of top-level cricket, or certainly of international. He's been playing international cricket, I think, since about 2004 for Afghanistan. He's been there, done it, seen it all. And is a fantastic bowler at his best. He's bowling those sort of undercutting the ball. If it lands on the seam, it'll spin. If it doesn't, it'll skid on. And I thought he was excellent today. And bowled at the death, which I haven't seen Mohammed Nabi do for a little while. He can bowl at pretty much any stage of the innings. Whether Nabi fits into the 11 in every game, given that Kane Williamson was left out today, I don't know. But it's a nice option for the Sunrisers to have. For sure. I mean, the big worry really for the Sunrisers is David Warner. You can't read too much into 4 balls, but I don't know if you guys agree, but he looked tentative today.
Yeah, I think he played on the wrong line twice. He could have been out in the first over when Harbhajan bowled, only for Cummins to drop him, and then he got out in a similar fashion, playing on the wrong line. I think he looks a bit rusty. He's just recovering from injury, so it'll be interesting to see how he does. SRH have obviously trusted him with the leadership, so expecting him to play all 14 games, of course. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly he can adapt back into playing conditions, and if he will be able to have a good season.
Well, a few times last year and the year before, when he and Bairstow were opening the batting together in 2019, it was usually Bairstow was going a lot quicker than David Warner. I think Warner was the Orange Cap winner that year, but quite slow in a lot of his innings, and a little bit scratchy, and he was during the World Cup a couple of times as well. I think the batters sometimes trying to bat quote unquote properly can inhibit them sometimes, because we all know Warner's destructive capabilities. But I mean, Prashid Krishna, I mean, that delivery, that was exactly how Jofra Archer's been getting David Warner out for the last year.
Yeah, I think in 2018 or 19 it was the year when Kane Williamson was captain and he dropped himself to play David Warner instead. So I wouldn't say it's beyond the possibilities if he doesn't score any runs for him to drop himself and then allow Williamson to get into the side.
2018 was the year that Warner was banned, and Williamson was
2019 then.
Yeah, Williamson, I think, was the Orange Cap winner that year, and he and Bairstow were superb, and you had Rashid Khan and Mohammed Nabi / Shakib, and that was a really well-balanced lineup. But and then Jason Roy, who's a very, very fine opening batter, probably won't get in the team. In large parts, unless they play on a really quick wicket, and you then want to pack the batting. But it is it's a problem. It's a problem of riches, but in the wrong way.
Yeah, and lastly, before we move on to the other 2 games that took place in the past week, I wanted to ask you. Obviously, one game is a very small sample size, but having seen both these teams play today, Who do you think has a better chance of making the playoffs? Monty, why don't you go first?
Well, I think with any team, it's about finding a group of 11 players that are actually going to win you the team, win you the game. We can talk about individual performances doing well, but, in the end, look, people talked about Harbhajan Singh, only bowled one over. But, he also adds value, from other aspects. And in the end, it's about getting the team over the line and finding a group of, 4 overseas players and the rest of the 6 players that wins you that team. So, look, I think KKR are always going to be challenging, the playoff spot just because of Owen Morgan's captaincy. He, like I said, he is the best T20 captain in the world. And, there'll be teams, looking at him, how he marshals the troops, the decisions he makes, during the sort of, critical overs, which bowlers he brings on, and also the batting as well. So the whole makeup of Owen Morgan, the leader, the captain, how he sort of builds a team, how he gets a group of 11 players is going to be probably, the cricket enthusiasts, as we say, would love to see how Owen Morgan, gets the team over the line.
Yeah, so just to end with KKR and Sunrisers, ask you, Nakul, simple question, within a minute, tell me, will there be a third star on this badge?
The third star might be pushing it. I still don't. I know Mumbai lost the first game, and we'll come on to them, but they still look the strongest team going into the tournament. But I mean, it was so ridiculously close last year, where I think you had 6 teams separated by 3 points or 4 points or something. But KKR, if they can keep up this level of individual performance, I think they will be challenging for that playoff spot. And I think that Sunrisers might have to slightly overperform themselves, or their balance will be working slightly against them this year. It's very early days, and I think that both sides have huge match-winning potential. Rashid Khan and Andre Russell are guys who can win games on their own with bat and with ball. But I think the early signs are very good for KKR. I wouldn't necessarily be rushing out to print that third star yet, though.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind, Nakul. I'll wait. But we'll move on to game 1 of the IPL. It was India's captain, Virat Kohli, versus India's vice captain, Rohit Sharma. The IPL broadcast team did not fail to remind us how many IPL trophies Rohit Sharma's won. So obviously, since 2013, they never won an opening game, and they carried on that tradition of not winning. I think in the post-match presentation, they asked Rohit Sharma, and he said, yeah, we're happy to keep this streak going if it means that we win another IPL. And I wanted to come to both of you individually. What did we learn from that game? Are Mumbai Indians still favorites? And is it just like the one-off that they have every season? They start slow? Or do you think there are some problems in Mumbai?
I think I said this as well on some of our previous shows. The only serious, it's not a serious issue exactly. The thing that mitigates a little bit against Mumbai is that they're playing their first 9 games on slow spinning wickets, and their spin attack is not as strong as others. With Rahul Chahar is a good bowler, Jayant Yadav is a good bowler, Nakul Pande is a good bowler, but they're not Rashid Khan. They're not world class, any of them, and that might be an issue at times. They've got some very good spin hitters. Of course, you've got Hardik Pandya and Kyron Pollard. You're not going too far wrong in the middle overs, and Ishan Kishan as well. They lost wickets at the wrong time as well. There's a lot more to come from a lot of their players. They weren't too far off. I think the win on Friday was a lot more about how well RCB played than it was about how poor Mumbai Indians were. I think Harshal Patel I thought was superb at the death. Not just the wickets, because some of them are slightly freakish, but I thought the way he planned his over was really good. I thought the way that he was used was really good. I thought the way that Virat Kohli got Mohammad Siraj finished and Kyle Jamieson finished, only having to bowl 1 over each at the death, was very good. I thought the way Dan Christian was used to fill in overs was excellent, and the way that Harshal Patel mixed up those Yorkers with those slower balls, and the way he delivered those was excellent. And then with the batting, Maxwell already looks a great addition, taking some of the pressure off Kohli and AB, and De Villiers is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I wanted to come to you, Nakul. Two things. Firstly, Washington Sundar opened. We discussed it in our preview when we spoke about it. Both of you said Washington Sundar would open, but again, like y'all said, it would be at the latter stages of the tournament. Of course, with Particle being out due to COVID, he got that opportunity, didn't take it. So, do you reckon Nakul he'll get an opportunity again this year, or that's it? He'll be back down to number seven. And secondly, is AB de Villiers human?
The second answer to that is only just. Yeah, I don't know what you expect me to say that's new about AB de Villiers. I mean, the guy is extraordinary. He hasn't played, I don't think, since the last IPL, and he comes in and does that. He's one of those guys. It's a little bit like Lionel Messi. He's so good, you almost forget to talk about him at times. The way the delivery from who was it? Is it Trent Bolt? I think that he basically a Yorker, a foot outside off stump, which he hits for six. It's unbelievable all shot. The kind of thing I've only seen Russell do. De Villiers can do things that no other batter can do. There was a slight issue in it because of that slight collapse. It took AB playing somewhere near his best to get RCB over the line, but I think they've done just about enough. I would like to see a little bit more intent from Virat Kohli, knowing that he's got Maxwell and De Villiers backing him up. But on the first question, Washington Sundar was trying to hit the ball too hard. He was trying to do the right things, but not able to do them. He was trying to attack the power play a little bit like somebody like Ridhaman Saha did, or like Parthiv Patel used to do, which is fine. I have no problem with that. It didn't work, and I think would expect Particle to come back in at the top of the order next game.
Yeah, and last question to both of you. Do both these teams make the playoffs? I assume we've all spoken about Mumbai extensively, so I'm assuming that answer for both of you is a yes. So I'll move on to the RCB bit. Do you both think RCB still make the playoffs, or do you think there can be issues for them, having seen that team combination?
Yeah, look, I think the RCB issue is why separate, AB de Villiers and Virat Kohli. I think he's got him up the order. I think AB de Villiers should be batting close to him and get your best player out there. Well, get him to face as many balls as you can. And AB de Villiers is the best player. Why would you want to do that? And I think that is something that, Virat Kohli may have to just address and think, okay, they won because, of under-par performance from, Mumbai Indians. And, that's something, even Virat Kohli himself, he didn't really, do so well as you expect him to do. So opening, is that the real, the right role for him? I'm not sure. I quite like the combination of, Kohli and AB de Villiers together in that batting partnership. 4-5-3-4. That seems like a better option. Or 2-3. Why don't you get AB de Villiers at the top or the other? When they both bat together, that's when they they help each other with the intensity of running, the boundary hitting, and like Nakul said, some of the ball striking of AB de Villiers is I think, I'll agree with him, just about human.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Nakul, in terms of the batting order?
I think this has been. I actually don't agree with that, and I think the fact that Maxwell is in there, a proven match winner, a guy who and you can trust, can hit the ball to all parts of the ground, can hit boundaries off all types of bowling, doesn't have an obvious weakness. Maybe he's a little bit. He can't hit the short ball as well as some, but he's still a phenomenal striker. I think that breaking them up a little bit and then kind of extending the life of that batting lineup, as it were. I think I semi-agree with Monty in the sense that Kohli, De Villiers and Maxwell in there, or whichever order you want to put them in, or probably it would be maybe ideal if they had two high-quality openers, but they don't, unless they want to go really overseas heavy with someone like Finn Allen at the top of the order, who's a super exciting player. But then you're light on bowlers, and I don't think they want to do that given that they've got already, can't fit Kane Richardson and so on into the team. I think there are definitely signs of good signs from Kyle Jamieson that he's adapted well to to his role, and that his role is going to be clear in this team in that he's not going to be used as a top and tail death bowler. He's going to bowl kind of mostly through the middle overs as a kind of enforcer type, almost like Liam Plunkett has done for England in the run-up to the 50 over World Cup, and then one over at the death. Mohammad Siraj, I think, looks a completely different bowler in T20. He looked just so much more confident about what he was trying to do. He wasn't trying to bowl like a sort of facsimile of a T20 bowler. He was banging the ball in just back of a length, a little bit like you see. I'm not saying he's as good as Jofra Archer, but he was bowling in the similar vein to Jofra Archer, banging it in back of a length, hitting just about the top of off stump, trying to hit the splice, and he was very difficult to get away. And I thought those two were very good. I would like to find a way to get them, Kane Richardson, into the team. I think both teams can expect more from their wrist spinners. I think Chahal and Chaher will bowl better than they did today. In terms of answering your question, just as we're wrapping up this, Mumbai for the playoffs, and I think RCB were in my four to make the playoffs at the start of the tournament, and I don't see anything that's made me change my mind.
Delhi versus CSK. Obviously, Delhi came out on top, actually cantered to win. A lot of talking points. Rishabh Pant, the captain, was visibly nervous at the toss, standing next to his idol. We'll start with that. Let's start with that. Seems like a good moment. How big was it for him to make his captaincy debut, so to say, in senior international cricket, next to his idol, MS Dhoni?
Yeah, look. I think for any sportsman growing up, when you see your idol, you're watching them constantly on TV, you inspire to be like them, and suddenly you're actually shaking hands and saying, "Well, heads or tails, mate." That must be a great moment for Rishabh Pant. Going back, and then MS Dhoni, the great man he is, he probably knows that his captaincy, his batting isn't to the best of his ability. But how often do you see him after the game just giving time to the players, to the opposition? He did it in the last IPL. He'll probably keep doing it here. But inside, when he goes back and he sits by himself, he's thinking, I want the old MS Dhoni back. The guy who used to just, win games from impossible situations, be calm under pressure as a captain. These are the qualities which I think we are all missing at the moment from MSD. And we hope to see that, but the great man himself, he's always willing to give time to others. But you don't get that impression of him that inside he's probably hurting, that he's thinking, well, we know it's an individual game, and as a cricketer myself, every player loves to obviously showcase their own talent. And that's something at the moment has been missing, for a while with MSD. So let's hope we see the old Marinder Singh Dhoni that we've seen over the last few years.
There's such an interesting thing with Rishabh Pant. Remember, Australia came to India in 2019 for a one-day international series. MS Dhoni took the last 3 games of that tournament off. So Rishabh Pant came in. His first game was in Ranchi, and he made a mistake, and the crowd in Ranchi, MS Dhoni's hometown, were chanting Dhoni's name at Rishabh Pant, his own fans mocking him. It's amazing how far he's come in those. Well, A, it's ridiculous that was happening, and B, it's incredible how far he's come in 2 years. He's now, if there was any doubt, and in my mind there shouldn't have been, about what Rishabh Pant is and what he could be for, and what he can be for India and every team he plays for. He's well and truly silenced that. And yeah, it was nice to see Rishabh Pant kind of allowing himself to feel how he was feeling in that moment. But I wrote a piece for Guerrilla Cricket before the start of the tournament. I'm a fan of this move to have Rishabh Pant captaining in Shreyas Iyer's absence. I think it's a good sign for him, and it's a good sign for Delhi. One, Rishabh Pant has captained before. He captained Delhi through a Ranji Trophy season when he was 20. Captain
2017, so that he must have been 19 at the time.
Yeah, sorry, he was 19, and then the Vijay Hazare just after his 20th birthday, and he got them to a final at 19, captaining guys like Gautam Gambhir and Ishant Sharma. And he's in the form of his life, and he's completely secure in his own game. He's secure and improving his game. It's the perfect time. And for Delhi do well when they're aggressive, when they attack teams with bat and ball, rather than trying to be canny or trying to think their way through games in that sense. Not that they're not thinking, but they're trying. They have to try and turn every game into as high a scoring and as aggressive and as fast a game as they can be. If you think of them in sort of, again, loose football analogies, but Liverpool or Borussia Dortmund, they're not the kind of game team to invite teams onto them and then counterattack. They want to hit hard and go. And that's what Rishabh Pant brings, and I think it sends out a good sign for them that they went with him rather than say Ajinkya Rahane or Stephen Smith, or Ashwin to a lesser extent because he's such a thinking bowler, slightly overthinking at times, but we'll come to that, I'm sure. R. Ashwin turning into Kedar Jadhav was quite fun at one point during this game. But yeah, I liked what the Captain Underground. But I like what Rishabh Pant brings as a captain, and I like what it says. And this was a completely different. We've seen already that the Wankhede, as though we didn't know, the Wankhede is a completely different service to the Chepauk service, and so much so that 188 is par, no more than par, really, against a good batting lineup for that CSK put on. And you know, coming on, Monty mentioned Prithvi Shaw earlier. Prithvi Shaw, we know, has done a lot of work with Praveen Amre, a former Indian batting coach and now batting coach at Delhi. I'm not always a massive fan of massively analysing technique, certainly not in the way that some commentators do. And Sunil Gavaskar, very much in the Bombay batting school, was talking about it from a very kind of boilerplate technical terms. But I liked this bit of analysis that his hands are very close to his body. So the backlift is going, the toe is going up towards point, as a lot of batters do, but he's in full control over the bat swing and over the speed. And he's got such a clean swing when it's working properly, and the way, the amount of control he appears to have over the bat face, and coming off, let's be honest, one of the all-time great List A domestic seasons that he's just pulled off for Mumbai. And he and Shikhar Dhawan reduced a quite good CSK bowling attack to rubble.
Yeah, I think just coming back slightly to Rishabh Pant quickly, I think the two ways to get into the Indian side when you're a young boy. It's either you're replacing a legend and you're always getting compared to that person, which is quite difficult to get out of those shadows. And I think Rishabh Pant, for him to get out of those shadows initially was quite difficult, which we saw in his performances. He was trying to play like someone he's not. And now he's finally got into his own. He's been given that space to be himself. He's no more being compared to MS Dhoni as much as he was right at the start when MS Dhoni was giving up the gloves. So I think that's helped him. The second way of coming into Indian team is he's the next big thing. He's the next Sachin Tendulkar. And that's exactly what happened with Prithvi Shaw. People forget that he was 19 when he came into that Indian side. So obviously there'll be flaws. He doesn't know his game as well as a 25, 26-year-old would, because he's not played senior cricket for that long. So, I mean, obviously he started off really strong. He's fixed his technique, like Sunil Gavaskar mentioned on commentary. And do you think that's a great sign for him to bounce back as strongly as he has after being dropped, especially with that great Vijay Hazare he's had as well? Now, Monty, you can go first, and then Nakul.
Yeah, look, you know, when Delhi Capitals, you know, were playing, and, you know, all eyes are on, obviously, you know, the team itself and the makeup of the side. But I think it's that, like, you know, Nakul obviously mentioned, we'll talk about Rishabh Pant in a minute, but how Nakul mentioned about, you know, they're aggressive in their bowling and in their batting. And that stems from Ricky Ponting. You know, Ricky Ponting has really come, you know, has grown. He's already was a good coach, but he's kind of found his feet where he thinks, yeah, this is a style of leadership I need. I need an assistant who's slightly more introverted, sits in the background like Mohammed Cave, got his notepad out, always writing the, you know, the notes, more of an observer as a coach rather than, you know, I'm very proactive, you know, hands-on, which, you know, Ricky Ponting is. That works so well, and it brings the best out of him. And also, Ricky Ponting enjoys the challenge, you know, must give him immense satisfaction. Thinking that last year, Prithvi Shaw wasn't doing so great. He's come back. He's adding to his confidence, his aggressiveness once his mindset is really clear. And, you know, Gavaskar mentioned about the coaching side of things. And I think, you know, we mentioned the flow, but what we saw particularly that was, you know, missing from his game last year was that back elbow. That back elbow tucks in as he plays the shots. You know, every time he's being aggressive, you can see wherever he wants to hit the ball. Because what that back elbow does, it gets you to play the ball late, but also allows you the control of that same ball, you know, pitch, let's say outside of stump, you can hit it, you know, where you want, leg side and offside, because you're playing slow, so late, and allowing that to, you know, the shape of your sort of position to hit the ball out of the ground, or even a single. You have that two options, and that's what it allows you to do, to hold that shape, to, you know, hit the ball as you wish. And it's great to see, Prithvi Shaw, humble beginnings, his background's very simple. He's come from very sort of humble beginnings. And they're the sort of players I tend to, sort of, cheer on a bit more. When I'm watching these sort of games, I'm thinking, he's come from not from a wealthy background, and he's doing extremely well. I really hope, he has a fantastic IPL and gets back, into international reckoning in some form, shape or form.
You would think that within sort of 4 or 5 years, depending on how long Rohit Sharma goes on for, maybe, but Shubman Gill and Prithvi Shaw will be India's test openers for a few years, and that's phenomenally exciting, really, from just for as a fan of quality cricket and of beautiful looking batters, and as well as Monty talked about being able to keep that shape longer. I think that's something Rishabh Pant has added as well. Rishabh Pant always had the power and he always had the hand speed, but he would often hit sixes kind of in spite of himself, where he'd be losing his base, or he'd be almost decelerating through the stroke. But now he's got that ability now to delay his stroke a little bit. It's almost like you almost think of it as tick, tick, boom. He sort of delays the whole bat swing, and he's accelerating through the ball and adding that little bit of extra power, which means that whether he's hitting offside, whether he's hitting leg side, whether he's hitting straight, if he's coming down the ground, if he's coming off the back foot, he's got such control over the bat swing. Both of them do now. Rishabh Pant has added to it, and Prithvi Shaw has refound it. And it makes you so hard to bowl to, because it takes out some of those obvious weaknesses, and it means that Prithvi Shaw at times, when things were going badly wrong, was really was sort of throwing his hand through the ball, but not in a decisive and not in a very committed way. He was defaulting to a slightly sort of desperate approach, where it looked as though he was trying to hit the ball too hard, and he was losing his shape, and he was actually losing power through trying to hit the ball too hard. And those little technical adjustments and that bit of work, and the confidence of having it work and having it score runs for him has it's reversed some of the damage he had done to himself. And Monty mentioned his background. It's also worth pointing out this guy's been tipped as the next big thing since he was 12. He got a scholarship over to play schools cricket in England when he was 12, I think, and playing first team schools cricket in England when he was 12 years old and tiny. Hailed as the next big thing in Mumbai cricket, which is, the most batting obsessed city in the world, at 14. Making his professional debut at 17 or whatever it was, and all these comparisons to Tendulkar and to Kambli and to Gavaskar, and it's all, and then from that, and then being seen as by your family as the ticket out, as the way out. I mean, that's a lot to deal with, and it's something that all Indian cricketers from these poorer backgrounds who make it have to deal with. And it's Prithvi Shaw kind of got turned into a meme at 20, which is, I think, some indication to a little bit of warning for fans, a little bit, just to back off a little bit in terms of those judgments. And credit to him for wanting to do that work as well. It's not always easy when you've had it, or when you're really down, to take advice and to recognize that this guy can help me. This guy isn't trying to tear me down. He's trying to help me. And that's exactly what's happened. Moving on to the bowling, I thought that the way they dealt with the absence of Rabada, Nokia, and Akshar, who would walk into their first choice 11, was quite interesting. I think I've liked Avesh Khan since I first saw him in the IPL a few years ago. Very aggressive, hits the pitch hard, tries to bowl quick, can bowl at almost any stage of the innings. I thought he was excellent. Amit Mishra was nice and tidy. Chris Woakes, I think, was really underused. It was. I think that the only mistake I think that Rishabh Pant made was giving Curran that extra over ahead of Chris Woakes. But there's a lot to like from Delhi, and I think they've, Monty and I have both talked about it, but they've gone back to what makes them really good in terms of trying to blow teams away.
Yeah, and I wanted to come from, obviously, the cricketers we've just spoken to someone who's trying to maybe get back into the Indian T20 squad just before the World Cup. It's R. Ashwin. because obviously Indian spinners have been struggling, and there has been some clamor in the media and social media about R. Ashwin coming back.
Is it surely?
Yeah, there's been clamor, and I would love to see him back because obviously we've been struggling with that second spinner. I think Rahul Chahar is too inexperienced to go direct into the World Cup as a starting spinner. So it'd be great to have an R. Ashwin at least in the squad. So from his perspective, obviously this IPL is huge because I'm sure he himself will know that there is an opportunity to get back in that squad if he does well. So how were you guys impressed with what you saw of R. Ashwin in the first game, or do you think he can do a lot more to contribute to the Delhi side going forward?
I'll let the world-class spinner take this.
Yeah, yeah. Look. I think with our Rushman, eyes are always going to be on him because there is that gap in the T20 India team right now. They're thinking who are best spinners right now, and they don't really know their best spinners. So if Ashwin, Jadeja get back to their form, it could, you shouldn't count out this possibility of actually both of them being their frontline spinners in the T20 World Cup. That could be very much the case if they bowl very well. But there's so much young spinners coming through. Every team has a spinner that bowls as variation, bowls got legs, fantastic leg spinners coming through for most teams. So that's, I think they would want obviously one of the leg spinners in the IPL, Indian leg spinner, to actually perform and do well, because I think Virat Kohli likes the option of having a bowler who can actually turn the ball both ways. And if Ashwin can actually have a great season, by all means, once if you perform well, then yeah, you're always going to be up for selection, and it'd be great to see. Veterans. I'm a veteran myself. Nice to see veterans perform.
And moving on to Chennai now, Shardul Thakur, coming off the back of a great 6 months, was doing well, had momentum by his side. Actually, I thought he's going to be one of the contenders for Purple Cap. He got wickets in the end, but he didn't start off too well. Nakul, were you surprised considering how well Shardul's done over the last 6 months, or do you think it's just the Mumbai pitch, it wasn't suited to his style of bowling?
I mean, it should be in theory. I mean, Shardul is from Maharashtra, and he knows the pitch quite well. I think he ran into two players in red hot form, which can happen. His cutters weren't quite gripping the pitch as they can do. Which is a little bit of natural variation. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Even on a pitch like the Wankhede. I think that I don't see there's too many issues with the Chennai bowling, to be honest. There are a few bad days, and running into Prithvi Shaw and Shikhar Dhawan in red hot form, chasing down a total as well within their grasp. I think it all came together to produce a bad day. Shardul Thakur has never been an economical bowler. He isn't the kind of bowler you go to for bowling at 6 sevens and over. He's a wicket taker, and that's how he should be used, and that's how he is used primarily for Delhi. For Chennai, and how he's been used for India as a partnership breaker, as someone who is a bowler who's always looking for wickets rather than someone who's going to bowl sort of lines and lengths and try and be an economical bowler. And knowing those roles is important. But you'll have bad days. Ashwin had a bad day. He did get taken down by again, Rhino and Moeen Ali, both very good players of spin, very good hitters of spin. It was great, by the way, to see Suresh Raina back in hitting form. It looks like he's not been away. And all of us who were talking about Raina being a massively important part of the CSK team back in the lineup were proved more correct than I think we thought we might be. And it was lovely to see Moeen used properly. And used in that middle order rather than trying to come in towards the tail end. I think for Chennai, from a batting point of view, I think they are slightly wasting Sam Curran.
I was going to come to that actually. There was a two-part question I had for both of you. Was one, how good was it to see Moeen Ali batting up the order at 3, which you kind of dived into a little bit? And second was, is Sam Curran being underused where he's batting at the moment? And how can they fit him into that top order? Do they take Faf out and play Lungi and Giri as one of the fast bowlers and then move Sam Curran up the top, or is that just not an option for them?
I think that's absolutely an option. You could leave. I'm not wholly convinced by Ruturaj Gaikwad. Not that he's not a good player, but he doesn't open for Tamil Nadu. He bats at 3 or 4. certainly did this season as they got to the final. Faf, I think, has got enough credit in the bank that he should be persevered, but I'd like to see Sam Curran opening. I'd like to see him use his destructive capabilities at the top of the order and get Chennai off to a start, at least get some runs on the board. It's very difficult to make up for a slow start, but at least if you start quickly and you tail off, like we saw with KKR today, or like we saw with Mumbai to a slightly lesser extent, if you start well, at least you've got some runs on the board and you've got something to build from. It's very difficult to this keep wickets in hand and explode later. It's quite risky in some ways. It's like, it's the inverse. Right? In a test match, trying to start and hit the ball hard from ball one doesn't always work because it exposes you to risk. I think starting slowly and exposing and trying to lay it all on the lower and middle order exposes you to risk. I would like to see Sam Curran opening for the rest of for at least a large part of the rest of the tournament. I think Lungi Ngidi will make a difference to the bowling line, as might Jason Berendorf, who's replaced Josh Hazlewood, and I think that in limited overs terms is an upgrade.
Yeah, Monty, are you in agreement with those changes? Do you think Sam Curran needs to be opening the batting to get the best out of him?
Well, it's an option, It's an option when you have, fantastic all-rounders in the team. Moeen Ali, I think up the order is definitely a position for him. And I think, they probably may look at, possibly bring in, one of the seamers who are slightly taller, Ndungi and Benroff, because, I think that just breaks up the sort of, the bowling options, once I think, you can see with Delhi Capitals, both Sam Curran, Thakur, similar height, similar release points. Yeah, there may be, left and right arm, but once you're set, it's pretty, it's pretty easy, to line them up. But if you have people in difference in height, then yeah, batsmen are always adjusting. And that's something maybe, MS Dhoni has to consider. I think if both Moeen Ali and Sam Curran are playing, then you need one of them to perform with the ball as well. I know we had a couple of drop catches from, Moeen Ali would have been a different story. But I think both of them playing, when you want to win, and the team is winning, their roles, they've got to be certain roles that, this is what you're there for, And in my opinion, I think it's a bonus for any runs we get off Sam Curran at the back end, but for his bowling, I think he's a bit more dangerous than possibly Moeen Ali. Maybe, the second half of the tournament when the wickets get a bit slower and they get a bit more tired. Moeen Ali will probably, be more of a useful asset with his bowling. And the concern is, they've got 5 games there. And they, you can see MSD thinking, gosh, I need to pick a group of 11 individuals that can win me a game of cricket, not just individual performances, and then think, well, we didn't really get over the line.
Yeah, that balance issue is important, and I think that role-based, that idea of everybody knowing their roles and having that clear idea of what, like, and you had to be a little bit flexible if somebody has a bad day and whatever, and you don't want to give the game away to the opposition as well, because as much as you have a plan, the opposition also knows you have a plan, but you can't go into it completely cold either. I think the other overseas player, DJ Bravo, had a decent day, but the game was kind of done by the time he came on, and he's batting too low to make a difference. DJ Bravo's taken more T20 wickets than anyone. If you want, phenomenally experienced, has been a remarkably good T20 player. But I think with the needs of this team, I'm not sure that I would have DJ Bravo in my first choice 11. I think that one of Ngidi or Berendorf, Ngidi's made a massive difference to CSK when he's been available. Once you talked about that height, Ngidi's 6'4", Berendorf is 6'6" and a left armour, bowls very well in the power play. Has excellent Yorkers, can swing the ball. Ngidi's very dangerous at the top and tail and has a very good slower ball now. Those off cutters, which with that change of height. And someone else who I think could be very useful, certainly later in the tournament, Mitchell Santner is a really good cricketer. So clever with the way he bowls, can bowl at any stage of the innings, can hit the ball a very long way. So that's an option for later in the tournament, maybe when they start playing on more spin-friendly wickets. But I think there's three players, not in terms of how good they are, but in terms of the balance. Ruturaj Gaikwad, Ambati Rayudu, and DJ Bravo, I think their positions are vulnerable just from a team balance point of view. But I think it's little tweaks, and little tweaks to the balance and getting players into the positions where you think they can perform. for Chennai Super Kings. The issue last year was the batting and the lack of intent. There was no lack of intent today on Saturday with the batting yesterday, and that's a massive plus. The bowlers will have better days.
Yeah, and obviously, lastly, having seen what we have, I know we've just spoken about making those slight changes to the team combination to make that balance a bit better for Chennai. Uh, I assume both of you agree with me when I say Delhi will make the playoffs because of how strong the team is. I don't see any major weakness in this side when Ishant Sharma and Umesh Yadav don't even make your 11, and Rabada and Nortia and Akshar Patel are still missing, and you canter to a victory. So I think Delhi should be fine to make the playoffs. But with Chennai, with what we saw, and still not getting that right balance yet, can they miss the playoff for a second year in a row after making it for every season over the last 12 years?
Well, I guess, very much, depends on MS Dhoni, coming back to his form. That's going to be crucial. If you can find that form, somehow we see MS Dhoni like we've known him, of the way he plays, and the performances that he puts in. I think that is going to be a huge sort of, relief for the team, because I'm sure everyone else probably, respect the idol, respect the man, his greatness, but they're probably sitting back and thinking, gosh, this is not the MSD that we know. He's not. And Stephen Fleming had a huge concern. He's probably thinking, I hope he hasn't, it's only first game. But again, I remember you saying, Viraj, that sometimes when the coach sort of feels a little bit down after the first game, do you think, he's sort of having doubts? And it's too early to tell. But I think the sooner we see Dhoni get back to form, I think the whole of the camp will be just relieved to think, yeah, they will start believing that we can actually make it to the playoffs.
Chennai are in a position now where they're scrapping they're in the bubble to make the playoffs. They're kind of when I say on the bubble, they're in that sort of gap. There's a lot of teams. I think it's going to be very tight again between 4th and 6th and 7th. Again, it's going to come down to 1 or 2 games, maybe net run rate a little bit. Monty said that any runs from Sam Curran for a bonus. I'm not actually sure I agree with that because of how good a hitter he is. I kind of think any runs from MS Dhoni this season, in a meaningful context, are a bonus because of the amount of other power hitters that they got. Well, not power hitters, but guys who can bat aggressively and clear the boundaries. Any other runs from MS Dhoni are a bonus. I think it's a good sign that him getting up and off 2 and getting up trying to hit a boundary is a lot better than him being 8 off 14 balls and trying to nudge the ball around. That is a better way to fail in T20 cricket. I very rarely criticize players for getting out trying to hit a boundary in T20 cricket. It's absolutely, I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think any runs from Dhoni this year are a bonus. There's a lot of upside from where CSK are now, and they weren't awful in this first game. I know the bowling figures might make it look as though they were. They weren't particularly. There was a lot more to like with the batting, and I think the bowling can only get better from what we know these guys can produce, the likes of Deepak Chahar and Shardul Thakur and Ravindra Jadeja and Sam Curran, and then you've got Ngidi or Berendorf or Santner. Imran Tahir, we've not even talked about, was the leading wicket taker in the tournament 2 years ago, and excuse me, certainly when you get to slower pitches, I mean, Imran Tahir is a massive asset to you. And we talked about Harbhajan when we were talking about KKR. They don't come much more experienced in T20 cricket than Imran Tahir. But I think there are already, even though they lost, I think there are signs of improvement and signs of encouragement on last year. It doesn't look as rudderless as it did last year. But I don't know if MS Dhoni is the key. I think any runs you get from him are a bonus. But there are little tweaks here and there they need to make sure that they're not really scrapping later in the tournament to make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything with those 6 teams now that have played so far. Thank you both for joining me for this IPL weekend review. We'll be back every Monday on your screens to bring you the action from the past week. Now we know with the IPL that 1 week can change so much. So when we sat here next Sunday, who knows if Chennai will be the next big thing in the IPL. So thank you both for joining me, and I will see you guys next week.